Alright guys, so in this video we're going to be doing the Mongoose schema for our app. And so basically I want to create another folder here, and I want to call it models. And inside of there I'll just simply, and I'm going to use the capital letter for this naming convention. I'm going to call it user.js. You can do lowercase if you want. And I basically want to bring in Mongoose. This is what we use to connect with Mongo, and we also could use it to make the schema. And basically I want to create a constant, and I can call it schema with a capital letter again. And it's basically a new Mongoose schema. And basically I want to do name. And basically these are, each of these fields will basically be like the fields inside of our object when we put it inside of MongoDB, which is a NoSQL database. So basically, this will be a type string, meaning that it should be a string. We have to do that. And then do we want it to be required? It has to be true. And then we can even do things like defaults, max length, min length, and different things like that. So basically, we just want those two for that one. I also want to do it for email and password. So let me email, password. And so I also want to, and you can like do things with like pre-hooks and stuff like because it's basically express middleware. If you're using like a pre-hook, it's like basically and I'll show you that in a second. First, let me finish the schema. So basically, we want a picture list, and then this picture list is going to be, it's a type array, so you can do that. And basically, inside of here, we want to actually put an object syntax as well, like this, because basically it's an array of objects, because we're going to have a lot of different things for each picture. So basically, we have the picture ID, like that, and that's a number. You don't have to do like object of type number or type string. You can just simply put that if you're not nesting anything else inside of that field. And basically, if it's not there, it won't be required. But if it is there, it'll be there. So a picture name, and basically MongoDB doesn't obviously support duplicate fields. You want to make sure each of these fields are unique for each object. Um, and MongoDB supports up to 100 levels of nesting, I think, just to let you know about that as well. Which basically you set something to an object and you set it to another object. So it supports 100 levels of those. To let you know that as well. And so picture title. And basically the difference between the name and title is the name is a unique string that is the picture plus a timestamp when it was created. But the title is just that unique, basically it's just the name that the user gives it. Or the name that is basically in the user's system before they upload it. Picture path, which is basically like the path of the actual image. That's basically that after we remove all the stuff that's unique to the person's system, so we can take that same image path and then just append it onto another folder. For instance, if you want to allow users to somehow download the images to their system, which I didn't do in this project, but you use the picture path and you got to use the FS module for that, I'm pretty sure. And then picture buffer, which is a type buffer. A buffer basically is just binary. If it's greater than 16 megabytes, you want to use gridfs and then use the virtuals with a reference to another schema object, and just set it there as a field. But because this is less than 16 megabytes for this project, I was going to put the buffer in here. And basically, when we get it on the front end, we're going to need to change that buffer to a base 64 encoded string, which is what HTML uses to basically translate the picture. And so that's basically what we would have to do there. But I'll do that obviously in the later videos. So the picture type basically is a string, and that's the MIME type. You got picture created at, which is when the picture was basically uploaded. I'm gonna use a number. We come here and make another field, and it'd be created at, which is when the user was actually created. And basically it'll be of type date. And the reason why I'm doing object syntax here instead of just date is because I want to also put a default, and that default is going to be a date.now. So we can do that there, and it actually turns it into a string before it gets there. So basically, when we get done with it, we want to, you stop saying basically so much. But basically, when we get done with it, we use module.exports, and we use Mongoose. Now, model, because remember, at the end of the day, this is a model, not a schema. The schema is basically like the schematic, or basically what's inside of the object, but the model is basically the name to associate with it. And so we'll use user like that, and then we'll do the schema that we just created like that. And so basically, also, by the way, like you have things like hooks, so you can use like schema dot pre, because remember we instantiated a Mongoose schema here, so we can use the methods on it. And basically, like what we put in here is almost like if you're doing an event listener or something, you would put the name of it. So basically, this would be like for the Mongoose save method, and then you put a callback of basically like done is what they use. And basically, what you would do is you would run this and like for stuff like validation. And so if it's validated, it'll return done, which will save it. If it's not, it won't save it. And basically, you can use those and put them inside here, and basically inside here because that's where we instantiated the schema. You can also add other methods to your schema as well by like naming them and putting them there. Like Mongoose is really powerful. So basically, that's how you would do that. So now we created the schema. So now I want to basically make another folder, and this time I want to call it routes. And basically, I want to create two route files in here. It will be off route.js, and then I'm going to do item route.js. So we'll do a new file. And so basically, the off route will be login and register, and then the item route will be anything that we do with the actual pictures. So first, let me just go to the off. Let me bring both of them in first. So basically, what we want to do is similar to bringing in this function here connecting to the database. We want to bring in each route. So we can do off route is equal to require, and then basically be /route/ and then whatever you named it. We want to do that for both of them. Require, and then be /routes. And then we just use them just like anything else here. So we would just do app.use off. Well, first you want to actually name it. So for any routes that have to do with a backend, usually the naming convention, you want to put API on it like that. And then basically whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to do API, and I'm going to do off like that. And then the actual route. And I'll show you why like we did that in a second. So let me just do it for the other one. API, and then I'll call this items. I think is what I called it. Let me check. Yep, API items. And so then it will just pass in items like that. So basically, I'm putting API off here. So when we actually bring this in here, first let me actually bring in the router. So we use something called Express Router when it comes to dealing with routes in Express. And so we need to bring in Express module in here as well. And then we can instantiate a router object from the Express object like that. And so basically, when we use router, we can use any Crud method, so get, delete, post, put, patch. And so basically, or you can do route, and then basically you give a route, and then you put the get and post methods all behind it. So if he's going to the same route but like a different method. For this project, though, I used all different endpoints, but you can use the same one with different Crud methods each time if you want to. So basically, the reason why I did that is because when for this, like, let me just go to my register here. So for the post route, in here I want to append on a register for the endpoint. If we do API off inside of here as well as register, in the URL it'll be API off register, and it'll repeat. And so you don't want that because we already named that part of the endpoint here. We're just basically appending on this part here for a post request. And so whenever it hits this endpoint, it'll just be API off and then register. So that's why I did it like that. And so we want to put in a callback with our request, which is what we send out our HTTP protocol and then the response that we want to send back. And basically, for the register field, when we do it on the front end, it'll just be a name, email, password form. And because we remember inside of the schema, we had that default date of now, so we don't have to deal with this because Mongoose will automatically make that for us. So we don't have to worry about that. And you can also do like timestamps inside of here, like as like the other option here, like if you want to do timestamps. And as one of the options, it'll set the timestamp in MongoDB as well. I forgot to mention that. But basically, inside of here, we'll do, we need to use destructuring. So you don't have to. You can use like rec.body dot for all of the fields as well if you want to. So name, email, password. And so this is called object destructuring. And basically, we just want to bring it from the body. Now, we use rec.body when we're referring basically to JSON data. So on the front end, on the front end, we'll basically be doing content type application / JSON, and that'll basically allow us to get these fields from the body of the request. And I also want to be basically let errors be equal to empty. So if we get any errors, we can basically like append them on and then like check the length of the errors list to see if there's any in there. Now I didn't do messages in this application, but I did like create the errors for them. So if you wanted to like do that to add on to it, you could. But I did create the actual errors like for them so that you can like see like basically how the process works. So not name, not email, or not password, meaning one of these fields are undefined. Then we just want to do errors dot push. And then we want to push on please enter all fields like that. And then we can do the same thing for all the validation here. I might just skip through this part simply because it's just me typing this in. Yeah, I'm just gonna skip through this part. All right. So I'm back, and the validation would be simple validation like this. And so basically, I just have the name, the email, if it includes that symbol, if they're defined. So basically, that'll be the validation. And now I just simply want to actually like if the validation. Well, we need to do one more validation actually, and that'll be if the user exists already or not. So check to see if the email already exists. User.find1. So, okay, well, I didn't bring it in yet. So basically, you want to bring in that user object or user schema or model, basically the user model that we exported here. And so you want to do const. I'll bring those in above that so that it looks a little bit neater. User is equal to var. And so now, because we're in our routes folder, we have to go up one directory, so up to the parent directory like this. And then it will be inside of models and user. Okay, so now if you see here, find, and then the methods pop up here, we want to do find one, like this. With ES6, we can just do email, we can do email like that. We just do email. And basically, if we find this, we can return, it returns a thenable, or you can do a callback. I'm going to use the then syntax. You can also use async await. And basically, if it returns a user, then we want to obviously basically get out of this route because that means that the user already exists. But before we do that, let me do catch. And then we get an error, we want to just log it. And so basically, you can also return status 500 or something like server is down or whatever here. For some reason, it didn't work. But basically, if the user is not equal to null, And basically I just simply want to do errors dot push. And I want to push on one more error. It'll be email already exists, like that. And then basically we now check if the errors list is basically greater than 0, meaning there's any kind of errors. And then we just simply want to return. And actually, I don't even need curly braces. We just simply want to return a res, which is that response from up here. And if you hover over it just to make sure that you're using the scope right, you see that it has response of any next to it for the tooltip here. If you go here, that should be response of any as well, right? Like right there, like that. It'll basically let you know that you're doing the right thing. It doesn't have to be a type any, but just it should be for this case, because we're dealing with a response object from Express. But basically, you should see the response class there. And we want to do res.status, which is basically a status code. 400 for bad user request, meaning the information. Because all these fields have to do with like a bad user request if they didn't fill out all the fields, if the name if the name is too long or short, as well as the email, and if it's not formatted right. Sorry about that. And basically, we want to append on some Json, and then we'll do message, which is the field. And we don't have to JSON stringify. When we do JSON, it'll stringify this for us already. And then we just want to append on the errors like that. And so basically it'll send back the errors and it'll get us out of this function here. And basically nothing else will happen here. And we won't get the data back. And we'll get a 400, which we can check on the front end and do certain things with that as well. So now after we do that, we want to basically use Bcrypt. So I'll bring that in as well here. Bcrypt.js. And basically what we want to do is we want to actually hash the plain text password that we have before we put it in our database for security reasons. So when we hash a password or anything, you basically want to generate a salt first, like this, and then you want to basically put in the number of rounds that you want to like hash it or basically salt it. And basically, it's by default it's 10, but we can put 10 there as well. Now when doing this, I find that using the actual callback works better than using a basically a venable. So I'm gonna use a callback for this because I ran into an error when using then with I can't remember if it was the gensalt function or I think it was the compare function from Bcrypt. So I think I just use callbacks for these ones. And so then we can do arrow function like that. And so once we generate it, now we want to generate the hash from it. But if there's an error, we want to simply log it, or you can throw the error. And so basically, we want to do vcrypt.hash because we're using that salt that we just created to hash the password. And we want to do password, which remember is this up here, which we brought in via the JSON body. And we want to do the sort that we just created from here that we got in the callback. And then we want to pass in another callback after that's been hashed, which is the actual the hash string that we want to return. It'll be like that. And so inside of here is where we actually want to set that password in the user object when we create it to this. So we want to create a new object here, and obviously we want to do something with the error if we have one. So we want to basically create the user here. And so I'll basically just say here, create new user. And so basically we want to do new, we want to create a object literal, and it'll be new user. You name whatever you want. It'll just be a new instance of that user model that we brought in. And basically inside of there we set the fields because we had that schema. And so we can do name, or with ES6 we can just do name, and then email, and password like that. And remember, we don't have to do the created at because by default it's done for us. And then this picture list by default is not required. That's why you'll see it's not required. And so basically you won't see this initially inside of the schema, but when we add a picture, it'll show up. And so basically now that we've created this new user, we just simply want to set the password. So we can do set new password to the generated hash. Now the reason why I set the password here, even though we're changing it, is because remember, um, it's required. Now, if you took away the required, you probably could just not set it when we instantiate this object, and then you can just set it one time here. But that's just the reason why I basically set it there and set it here as well. And so set new password. So we'll do new user dot remember a password and set it equal to that hash that we got back. And then now after that, we just want to save it here. Otherwise, it won't basically go to the database. And so once we save it, we can put in any options we want. It returns a promise, so we can use them. And then basically returns the document here. So when we do user, you can see user and then document. It returns a document. Basically like whatever was done. And we want to do a catch as well. And so for the catch, we just basically want to console log the error. And you can also, well, first let me just get the error here. And then I'll do square brackets like that. And the reason being is because I want to not only console log the error, but I also want to do res.status 500 like that. And then I can append on some Json. And I can do message. And I can do server is down right now. Please try again later like that. So you can do that as well, just to show you that. And so basically, we get the user back, and now we want to create a JSON Web Token. Actually, I don't even think I downloaded the JSON Web Token module. So I need to do that really quickly. First, let me do create new JSON Web Token like that. And this is where we would make it at. Let me actually install it. npm install, and it's just called JSON Web Token like that. And then save. That'll install it for us. You can also do yarn add. And basically, JSON Web Token, or like the actual string or the token, is base 64 as well. So basically, you can use the function in JavaScript called A to B. I'm not sure if that's a node function or JavaScript function, and that allows you to uh, basically decode it. And also, it has three parts separated by dots: the head, the body, and the tail. And the body is where the data is for the token, which is whatever you want to put in there. The head is basically like the ID or the way to identify it. And then the tail is like any options like the expiration and all that. So the tails should be changing every time you create a new token. And so basically, we bring it in. So we pass. I'm gonna just call it JWT. Required JSON Web Token. And basically, the routes that I'm setting up for the off route are exactly similar to the one I did in the mean stack, which is where I'm using Angular instead of React, that I should have up on the channel by now. And I do the same thing here. This one I explained it a lot better, and it's a lot more smoother, but the other one I did the same thing. So basically what we just want to do is we want to do jwt.sign, which creates the token. And inside of here, this is where we want to pass in the head, the body, and the tail. But we don't do it like that for this because when we create it, we actually have to pass in first the ID, which will basically be the user from the object we just got back. And in Mongo, it's set to underscore ID. So basically, this will be the ID that's generated automatically for the user, which Mongo does for us. But it's underscore ID and not ID. And speaking of which, I almost forgot to mention, as well as like type string, you can do like type Mongoose dot object ID. I think or Mongoose dot schema dot object ID or something like that. And basically, it'll give you an object ID for like basically each object or each field that you want to identify inside of here. And basically, that'll let you index every like thing you want to index. You don't want to use too many indexes. It's better to nest things, but I was just showing you that you could do that as well. And then there's one other thing. You can also set the ID field of underscore ID if you don't want it to generate auto ID. You can set that to false as well, like that. And basically, that'll just set the ID to false if you wanted to do that as well. But we want it to auto generate it for us, so we'll leave that alone. And basically, if we come back here, we have to now pass in that secret, which is just a string. And it's good to have snippets for some of these things, like the sign function and all that, so you remember what it takes in. And like basically, like you name it like JWT creation with JSON Web Token module or something, and then you basically would just put it in a text file so that you can look at it if you like forget like what it takes in and stuff. Um, and basically just to help you like along the road. And so basically, we have expires in field here as well. And now this is in seconds, not milliseconds. So 60 seconds times 60 minutes, so that'll be an hour. And basically, now it takes a callback as well. And so that callback is the error and then the actual token that was created. And so inside of here is basically there's an error, we want to do something with it. And then after that, we just simply want to take that token and we want to return it to the front end with the actual like object, which we're going to actually create as well. And so simply for the user object, we're only going to be returning a couple things. And that's just going to be the ID and then the actual token. So it'll be new object like this. And also you can just JSON it and put it in the actual JSON parentheses as well. But it'll be new object, and then basically I'll set it to underscore ID as well, and it'll just be that user dot underscore ID again. And then the token is token, or now it'd be like token like that, but you can just do ES6 like this. And so basically I just want to after that return a res status of 200 or 201, meaning everything is okay. 201 means something was created, I think. And so basically JSON and then the actual new object. And so that's it. And we don't have to return because there's nothing below this. This is the last line that should be hit anyway. And then, and so basically that's it. We don't, and so we're done with the register route. And so now, this entire route here, most of it's similar when we do the login route. There'll be a few changes. First, let me just bring in, or let me just copy this part for the validation. There'll be a couple changes for the validation, but it'll be basically the same. And right below the register route here, we can do router. And before I forget, actually, we want to export this, so we want to do module exports and then the router like that. Because if we don't do that, it won't be recognized by basically the auth route when we bring it in, just like when we exported the function for setting the database up. I forgot to do that. So we want to export the router at the very bottom. And so for the login route, we want to do a post request again, and this will be /login. Remember, API off, and then we're appending on that login. And so basically, we're taking in a request and a response. And so basically, inside of here, it'll be the same validation, but with a couple of changes. And so we want to just take out the name because we're going to just be using email and password to log in. And you get to do a username as well. You have to include that in the register. And so basically, same error validation. I'm taking out the name validation here, obviously, and then, like I said, this validation isn't production type of like validation, but this is just something to show you like how it works. And then basically up here we want to just, or down here we want to just basically do errors. dot size is basically greater than 0. Actually, that should be length. Wait, did I put size up there as well? Let me check. Yeah, that should be length, not size. Size works as well, but that should be length. I'm thinking about Java. So basically, this should be length, and basically what I want to do is, like an array list in Java, I put size instead of length there. Basically, this should be length, and if it's greater than 0, then we want to return. So I want to do return. We don't even need curly braces here. We just do return res.status, once again a 400 for bad user request, and then JSON. And then it should be message and errors like that. And so basically it'll get us out of this route again if there's any errors. And so now after we did that, we want to actually find the actual email, but this time when we find it, by the way, I'm not using just find because it'll list through the entire thing and it'll be longer. It'll look through the entire, it'll query basically the entire collection. It'll be a lot longer. If you use find one, the moment it finds one, it returns it and it's done. So you always want to use find one when you're only looking for one thing to keep things quick. And so you want to do find one.then because it returns a promise of the user. And inside of here, or the document, basically, you can name this whatever you want. Just the document that for that model that we made. And basically, and before I do that, let me do a catch as well. So if you have error, we can please try again later. And then basically this will send it if for some reason Mongoose can't connect or something's wrong there. Basically what we want to do here is if not user, meaning that it couldn't find one, and that's what we want to return to get out of this. And we want to use res.status of 400. And then we want to do .json. And then we'll do message. And then we'll do emails not found. Or you can do another validation saying the password didn't match or something like that. But basically, if we can't find it with the email, then that would be this here. And then if we can, actually with the password, we want to use Bcrypt compare. I almost forgot. So basically, with Bcrypt compare, it's the same module that we brought in for the Bcrypt generate salt and generate hash. And so we'll just compare it. And so that password, which is once again what we brought up here, basically, and obviously the scope is different for each route. So you can see even though you did const instead of let, you can see the scope is still different for these, so you wouldn't have any scope issues when you're putting these in each route. So basically, it'll be the password that we brought in for this specific route. And so it'll be, that's the string, as you can see here, and then the actual hash, which is the user.password, which if there is a user, we should have in our database, a hash password. And then we want to use the callback. I had problems using the then syntax for this, so I just used the callback. Oops, we don't want the array object. And basically, so basically, if not success, we want to return res.status of 400 again. We just want to do JSON, and then for the message, we want to do server, or not server, but password is not, or basically password is invalid for this email, like that. Basically, that'll just tell them that the password wasn't compared successfully, meaning it wasn't equal. So that means they probably put in the wrong password. And so now, if all that's basically, if it works and there's no errors, we want to basically create the web token again. So I can actually just copy it right from up here. It's the same exact thing for this part. We're just signing it a token again. And obviously this token here will be different from this one up here because the expiration on it should be different. Because basically it'll give you the current timestamp and then when it expires. And so that tail should always be a different string each time. As well as the ID, because the user ID should be different from Mongo each time. So it should always be a unique token. And so we just want to return a new object, same fields, and we're done with this. So the login and register routes are completed. This is how you would set them up here. Basically, like we're just validating. And then once we validate, we actually send back the token, which will be used on the front end to authenticate any like API request that we make for like dealing with pictures or anything that requires a user to be authenticated. So basically inside of here in the item route, now I basically want to bring in Express again as well as the router from Express, and I just want to set up, wait, did I download Malta? Let me check. Okay, yeah, I downloaded it. So basically, I want to set up Malta in here. I didn't set it inside of a separate file because remember it has to be part of um, that Express app object here, and that's why I did it that way. So I basically put it straight up inside the item route because you can do multiple different, um, like you can basically store multiple different things with Malta. Like it doesn't have to just be one specific object, pretty much. And so I'll show you how to do that as well. So we want to bring in a few things first. So if you require, wait, am I still recording? Let me make sure. Okay. So basically, if you require Express, it'll be the user model that we created in our models folder. And so it'll be models user, and then it'll be Malter, which is what we use for dealing with the pictures. So it'll be Malter. You also have file upload, Express file upload, and there's other ones as well. So basically, I'm using Malter for this one. We want to bring in the FS module as well. We require that. Actually, I did use FS Extra here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually download FS Extra really quickly. Like this. And I want to call yarn again, basically to change that lock file. Because I just did a couple of things for the version of it. And then after that's done, we'll set up Malter, and we can just set this up outside of all the routes, so we can use it wherever. It doesn't have to be like basically connected to a specific route. So we can do. Well, first, let me bring in the rest of the stuff that I need here. So we'll do the path module, the crypto module, the hash it, and then we'll do the router. So the router is equal to express router, like that. And so basically now, I want to set up Malter, so here be Malter setup. And basically, like I said, you can pass this into another object or to another file, the entire Express app instance, and then you can put Malter in there. But I just put it straight up in the routes file here for this. You can do const storage, which is the storage engine that we're going to be using with Malter. So we'll use the default one. And you have memory storage and you have disk storage. I want to use the disk storage. And so basically, we're going to do destination, which is where we want it to be stored. And it basically takes a request, a file, and then the actual callback. So when it's done. And basically, what we want to do is we want to let path, or you can use const, doesn't matter, path name equal to path from the path module dot join, and then we want the current directory like that, and then we want to cd out of it to the parent folder, which will be the root app folder, and then we want to do public, which is that static folder that we created here, that public folder that we basically made static here like this. And so then we want to also do a folder called uploads. And that's basically the path that's going to be used to basically like upload everything here. And we also, if you're not using fs.make.sync to make that uploads folder, you have to manually make that here. So we can just make it here and call it uploads like this. And so basically now we have to call the callback. So we'll do CB, and if there's no errors, that'll be null for the error. And then the actual path name is what we put in there for the callback. And so now we also want to do the file name like that. And so then it'll be request file and then the callback again. But this time we actually want to set the file name, and then we want to set it to the field name, which basically is just the actual name of the file, like something.jpg, something.png. And so we want to set that field name like that. And then we want to add on there something to make it unique. So I'm going to append on the date.now. But you can also use crypto here if you want. I use date.now like this, and then it turns it into a string, and then I use the path, that extension name, which is like the MIME type, and then file.original name, which gives me the original name of the actual file. And it just gives me the MIME type of that. Basically, the file.original name is the entire path of that file. And so that's what we have to pass in there in order to get the extension from it. Why am I getting an error? Oh, I forgot to add a plus sign. There we go. And so basically, I want to create name, and I want to set that equal to file.file name. You don't have to do that part, but I just did it there to make it look neater. And then we want to set null for the error if it was successful, and then name like that, which is the path that we created here. And so this is basically all we want to do for the actual storage engine part. And then right below that, we actually want to use the storage engine. So use storage engine. And this is where we want to create another variable. And we want to do malter. This time we want to pass in storage like that, or just malter and then storage. Basically, that'll allow you to use that storage engine. This whole thing is a storage engine that we just made. GridFS has the same setup basically, and then so instead of like using the default, you use GridFS, and then you would pass that in here as well. And GridFS is usually used for files that are greater than 16 megabytes. And so basically, let me see what's next here. So first I want to do the actual the adding of a picture route. So I'll do router.post, and I'll do upload. And so in order to pass parameters, we can set placeholders like this. And so basically we would do, let me see, I want to make the all function first. I guess I'll do the all function. So for the all function, we're basically validating the token. And so we want to basically do that for each route here. I guess I'll do that last because I just want to show you how to like set up malter. So upload.single for basically one object. And we're just doing user image, which is what we're going to call the field name, which is what's basically what we do on the front end when we use the form data JavaScript object, which allows us to like set field names like that. And so basically that's what we do there. And then we're going to do, and that has to be the same, otherwise it won't work. And we'll do our request response. And inside of here, we want to bring in the ID. So instead of rec.body, we want to do rec.params, like that. And that'll allow us to bring it in. And now we want to convert that picture from form data to a buffer. So I'll just say convert picture from form data to buffer. And so format a type to, because for browsers it's called array buffer for the type, and for Node it's called just buffer. And so you want to convert it to a buffer. And so we want a user image, which is what we'll name it, from the rec.file, which this rec.file comes from Malter. So if you don't use Malter inside of the middleware here, which is what this is, this rec.file, but like basically the .file won't be recognized on the request object. And so that's why you want to pass it in here. You can also pass in upload here and set a callback. But I just pass it inside of here because you can do that as well. If you pass it in here, you can handle the errors more like dynamically. But basically, I just passed it in there. And so basically, let me see here. So we basically want to convert it. So it'll be const pick buffer for the actual data that we get in from the form. And I'll explain this again when I make it on the front end as well, and I'll come back here and explain it. So don't worry if you don't understand like all the stuff I'm doing here right now, because basically like it won't really make sense probably until I actually do it on the front end as well. So basically read file sync, which basically allows us to read a path or a file from the system, and because it's an image, we just put in the image path like this path.join. And then dir name, which is the current directory. We want to go outside of that. We want to go into public and then upload. Because remember that when we upload this, it'll be inside of here and it'll give us the specific image. So we want to do uploads, and then we want to append on their user image dot file name, which remember is what we did up here when we created it. So this will be a unique image each time because of the timestamp. And so when we go in here, it'll grab that particular file name, and basically it'll turn it into a buffer for us. And it's synchronous, so if you just do read file, it'll be asynchronous. And then while it's creating that buffer, it basically you won't be able to get the data for it, and so it won't basically it won't work. So you want to make sure that's synchronous. And so now you want to do file path that gets removed because this part is unique to every system. And this is basically I'm just making this so that we can remove all the clutter pretty much from the file path. And so it'll be join dir name like this, and then dot dot to get out of the routes folder, and then public. And so it'll basically leave the uploads folder on there, but basically it'll get rid of this. To save bytes inside of like a database, you can get rid of the extra stuff. And so const rel path, a relative path, will be equal to rec.file path replace like this. So we're replacing the path, and we put in that remove, which basically just is what we're trying to replace. And then we're going to set it to this here. So we're replacing that clutter, pretty much all the extra stuff at the beginning, and we're just replacing it with an empty string character. And then what we want to do is we want to create a timestamp. So we'll do let timestamp or const timestamp. It doesn't matter. I'll stay consistent and use const. And we'll do date dot now like that. That's a number. Because remember in our user model here, we have the timestamp as a number. So when we're creating it, the created and updated after these will be the same. So that's why I made it once here, so that we'll use the same one. And then I want to do const user title is going to be equal to user image dot original name, which remember is just something dot whatever the MIME type is. So for instance, like beaches dot JPEG, or like city dot JPEG, which is two of the pictures that I'm using with this. And so basically we want to split it by the dot to actually get the MIME type, and then we want to return, or not get the MIME type, but to get the actual name, and then we want to return 0. If you return 1, that'll actually give you the MIME type of it. And so what we want to do is we want to create a title, which is basically the actual image name. So it'll be field name like that. I know it's confusing, field name, file name. The file name basically is that unique name. The field name is basically um, like it's basically the same as the original name, except it's just the name, I think. Without the MIME type, I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But basically, we want to create name as well, user image, dot field name, and this is when we want to actually make it unique. So we'll do underscore, and then we'll do plus. This is what we want to bring in crypto. So we'll do create hash. You see there's ciphers there as well. And so now MD5 and SHA-1 are basically not secure anymore, which for encoding. For this, we want to use SHA-256, like that. And so basically that 256 is logarithmic, so a base of 2 for binary. And so I think that'll be, I think that's like 8, 2 to the power 8. So that's basically what that is, 8-bit. So basically, dot update, and it'll be the title, which is what the field name is here. We could have just did user image dot field name as well. And then we want to digest it, or basically return it to that name variable here, and we want to digest it as hex, like that, which is the encoding we want for it. You can digest as binary and other things as well, but we want to use hex. And then we're not done actually. I want to add on one more thing here to make it even more unique. And I want to add on underscore and then the actual timestamp again, like that. And that'll make this super unique. And so now what we want to do is we want to create an object here. We're not instantiating like a new like user object, because remember, inside of here, this is part of that user schema. So if we create a new one, it'll require these fields here, and we don't want that. We just want to add something to this here. So basically, we want to do picture object like this, and we want picture title. We want to set that to user title like that, which remember is this here, the original name without the MIME type. And then we want to do picture name, which is just the name here, which is that unique string that'll always be unique, and it should never be the same. Picture path, it'll do relative path like that, which remember that's the path that I'm putting in there, which we removed all the bloat before it, and we just have that path here like this. And then it'll be the picture buffer, which is the actual data, which remember we use the read file sync version of it to make it synchronous, so this shouldn't even get ran until this is done. And then picture type, which is the MIME type. So if you're doing multiple different file types, you want to basically pass in the type so that when you're sending it, you know like what type of thing you're working with, like if it's a GIF, JPEG, PNG, things like that. So it'll be user image .mime type, which you get from that rec.file here. You can also do original name and get the one index of it. Either way works. And then we'll do picture updated at and created at, and both of those should be the same timestamp. Uploading an image, so we're basically creating it. And so created at should also be the same. These are numbers. And then that's it for this object. So now we just simply want to use find and update. Remember inside of here I set this to false in order for the find and update to work the right way. Otherwise it'll give you a warning of it being deprecated when it's set to true. And so we want to do the user object find by ID and update, or you can do find one and update. Both work. So find by ID and update. And I want to pass in the ID from the params that I got from up here, from that placeholder. And I want to just, now for this here, I want to use the push field, which is provided to us by MongoDB, and that allows you to simply, you don't have to like filter or grab it and like append on like something to an array and then return it back. You can simply just use push and pull. Pull basically removes something from the array in MongoDB, and push actually puts something on it. You also have things like lm match, which like looks for a certain field inside of a anonymous object array. So I want to use push for this, and then you simply would be on whatever you want to like push onto it, and you have to specify obviously the list of anonymous objects. You can also push on strings, not just objects, whatever you want to push on there. So it can be a list of numbers, list of strings. It doesn't just have to be anonymous objects. And basically you can do picture list because that's what we named it in here. And it's going to push on this entire object. And so basically we want to do picture list. Sorry about that. Picture object like that, and it'll basically push it on there for us. Now, when you're using find by ID and update or any update Mongoose methods, you want to basically pass in something for the options. And basically, you want to pass new to true. What that means is when after this gets updated, it'll save it to the database if it's true. If this new, by default, I think it's false. And what that means is when it updates this to the database, um, basically it won't actually save it to the database until you do it manually. I guess for security reasons. And so basically, if you don't want to deal with that, you have to set new to true like that. And so basically, it'll be then, and it returns that user document. But we're not doing anything with that for this particular um, route. And then we'll be doing an error if we have one. We'll console log it. And so basically inside of here, I just want to do res.status 200, meaning it was added successfully. And then we're going to append on some Json. And I just want to basically say message success. And then I can just make this look a little bit neater. Like that. And then I just simply want to do the object, which is what we're returning, and that'll be the picture object like that. And so that basically will return the object back to the front end as JSON for us. And so that's the add route here. You see there's a lot. This is the most complex route for this file because we had to actually send the entire buffer. But then, like, because we're returning each object, we don't have to actually do that in the retrieve route. So that's just the add route here for this. So now I want to create another route, and this will be the retrieve route for this. And so, like I said, you can put them all in the same route name, like items/images, and then you can do get post retrieve. You can put them all behind each other by name them. I gave them unique endpoint names, unique route names. So I'll do router.get /retrieve, and then ID like that. And then we'll do request response. Eventually I'll get to authenticating the token in a second, which you would pass in just like the Malta middleware. You would just pass in a function there to basically authenticate before it gets to this callback here. And if it's not authenticated, it will return a 401, meaning the user is unauthorized. So I'll get to that in a second. So if your ID is equal to rec.params.id, or you can use the structure. Both ways work. And basically it'll be user. Well, user.find by ID, because we want to basically get the actual user object with the ID, and then when we get that, we want to return it. And so inside of here, this is where we want to basically just simply return a res.status 200, and then we want to pin on some JSON, and I want that to be the pictures, which is the entire pictures list. It'll be user.picture list like that. And then if there's a catch, we can do error. And then we can just console log the error like that. And so then that's basically it for this route. Besides obviously putting in the auth middleware function that I'm going to make. So we want to make a delete route here as well. So we're deleting an image like this. And then we want to do request response. Oops. And then we want to bring in the ID again so that we know what user to basically user document to interact with. And then we want to do the pick created at, which is what I use for this. Because the pick created at is obviously going to be different. Oh, so sorry about that, man. Basically, the pick created at is going to be different for each user because even though the users can have same timestamps, the ID for that user is different. So we're always going to be in a different user document because of the ID here. So we can simply just pass in the pick created at, which I called it pick created at, not on the front end. When I made this earlier, I didn't do picture created at. And so basically it'll be rec.body like that. And so basically we want to just do user dot find by ID and update again. And this time instead of pushing, we're pulling. So we're gonna do pull, and we basically just want to pull from the picture list like this, wherever the picture created at is equal to pick created at. So basically, wherever that timestamp is the same, we want to pull that one out. And so then we want to also set new to true. So we got to do, because in order to update it, we have to save it like that and do true. And then basically after that, it returns a promise. We're not doing anything with the user document as well for this one. So you can leave that blank if you want. And then obviously there's a catch. So if we get any errors. And so basically, and then we want inside of here we want to do res.status of 200. And then we want to do Json a message of success. So we have a way of knowing. And then down here I just simply want to just export the router again before I forget. And so basically these are our routes. So we're done with all the backend routes. And one more thing I want to do is create that auth function. And basically what that's used for is to basically check for the token each time. And so what we want to do is I'm gonna make it inside of config here. I'll just call it auth.js. I want to bring in the JSON web token module again. So I want to do JSON web token like that. And I want to do const auth. And basically this is a function here. So and the reason why I'm doing request response and next is because this is a basically express middleware function. So we're passing it in here. And so just like request and response, we're basically adding something to these objects if we want to. Now for this particular function, I'm not adding anything on, but I'm just showing you that that's what you would pass in there. And then the next is called with express anytime we use a middleware inside of the express object, so that basically it'll go on to the next middleware when the middleware you're on is done. And so basically I'm gonna put this in the try catch if there's any issues. And then I want to basically do for the error, I just want to return, because remember, like we're not calling next. So I want to return res.status of, and then I want to do, And even though this isn't response, it is res of any, when we put it inside of the middleware, we put it basically like in between these here, it'll recognize it. So res status of 400, and it'll be Json, and then basically it's 400 because no token found, meaning that the user must not have logged in or something like that. And so in the try, we just simply want to do const of token is equal to request.header, because we're going to set this as a header on the front end. And I just called it x off token, like that. And that's how we're going to basically retrieve the header. And so basically, if there's not a token, meaning it's undefined, and we didn't retrieve it, we just want to return res.status of 401, meaning the user is unauthorized. Meaning that there's no token, so the user wasn't authenticated, so the user is unauthorized. And below that, we want to say const decoded token. That's what we're doing. We're going to decode the token with the JWT module. I just want to use JWT.verify this time. And I want to do token, and then the actual secret key, which remember inside of our config here is JWT secret. You can name whatever you want. So that's basically what this secret should be. So that'll be JWT underscore secret. Then I want to do next. You want to parentheses like that, and basically this will call the next middleware. And so the reason why I'm doing that, and you want to export it at the very bottom here as well. You can also export it up here. And so the reason why I want to call next is because when I bring it in here, which first let me bring it in. And it should be, let's see here, dot config off, like that. And so basically, for each route here, or the API routes, I just want to put off like that without the parentheses. And now what this will do is, if the token isn't there, it won't go here and actually grab the image, and it won't run any of this callback here. So all of this will get ignored, and it'll simply return a 401. And then you can catch that on the front end and show like a unauthorized message, or you can like redirect them using that to, like, if you're using like a React router DOM, or you're changing the state to somehow show like the login the user or register form. You can do that as well. But basically, this is what allows you to do that. And so we want to basically do that for the rest of these routes here as well. Make sure you route up here. So you want to do that here. And I know there's stuff like Redis sessions to use like session data is more secure, but JSON Web Tokens can be used as well as session. You can use them both in the same app. And JSON Web Tokens are basically used for like for timeouts and things like that, if you for security reasons. And so basically, let me see. That's it for this. One more thing I wanted to show you how to do really quickly before I finish up with the back end, because we're done with the back end for the most part. Let's see. There's a couple of things I actually want to do. One is I want to actually redirect using app.get. I want to redirect. And you can basically put this below it, like you put it right here, app.get, and basically anything that's not defined on the front end, I want to basically redirect to the index HTML. So we can basically do, I just simply want to do a res.redirect, or not res.redirect because we're actually showing a certain file. So we want to actually do res.send, and I just want to send that index HTML page. And basically you have to do /, and it'll be a folder called client, which is what I'm going to make for the front end. in the next video. And then there's going to be a folder called build, not build. Yeah, I think it's a folder called build. And basically, that's the folder that has all the static assets when we build it. And then we want to do index.html like that to basically render that HTML page. So basically, any page that's not defined, that they add onto our domain, it'll just redirect them to the actual index.html page of the app. And so basically, that'll be it for the entry point file and for the backend. I guess one more thing I can do in this, and make sure I'm still recording. All right, one more thing I can do in this video is show you how to use Postman. Basically, and I'm just gonna just show you how to do that so that we can like create a user really quick and get a token back, and just show you. You can also use curl in the terminal, but Postman gives you a nice graphical user interface for you to use. So basically, let me just terminal here. So yarn dev, that should run the server. And so now basically when I come here, you can see I have some routes. I was using these for my mean stack as well, but the off and log, register and login are the same. So for this, I want to turn this from login to register. You can make you can see there's a collection here I had for my post grid, and then my album creator is the one I'm doing now. And you can see there's a lot of different things you can do. You create new collections, which is what each one of these are, for these methods here. You can see the history of all the method requests I was making. Let me see what else. Obviously your Crud method here. There's a different methods here you can do. You can name it whatever you want. These are the parameters here if you want to pass in the parameter, for instance like an ID or something like that. The content type, that's where we would put application/JSON, which is what you need in order for this to work, because we're sending JSON data from the front end. Because remember, for the items route, or not items, auth route, we're grabbing it via direct.body. And so in order to actually grab that, we need to pass application/JSON as the content type. And then in the body, we want to go to raw, and that's where we would put the JSON in double quotes. So basically here, I have the email and password already. I just want to just simply put the name field as well. Make sure it's in double quotes because it's JSON. And make sure you put a comma here. If you don't, you'll probably get something like JSON undefined on like index of 20 or something like that. And usually when you get that error in the terminal, that just means you forgot a comma or something like that there. And so basically you see we got GraphQL here as well, which is pretty cool. And so we should send it, so we should instantly get back something because the server is running. So if we hit send here, you can see here, you can see we get the ID, which is the user ID generated in Mongo. And then we got the token. And you can see here, I think the EYJ stands for JSON at the very beginning of the token. But you can see, like I was talking about earlier, it's split by dots. So you see there's a dot here. That's the head. There's a dot here, which is separating the body and the tail. So that's the body. And then that's the tail. And you see how the tail there is one thing. And then basically if I made another user, like if I change this to just anything, you can do the same name and password as long as the email is unique. And I send it again. You can see this part right here should change as well as the ID. And you can see it changed as well as the ID changed. And so that's basically how you would do it. We can also log in. So I can just log in with this one here. So I can just take this off. And now I can turn this from register to log in. And then I can log in, and now I should get a different token here as well because I'm creating another token in the login route as well. You can see here I get a different token, but I get the same ID because that's the ID we got from Mongo. So everything works. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section for the backends. I can hopefully explain them. And until next time.